Helen Patterson, and I'm the founder of Life Works Well. And I started this With Heart book circle back in the fall to bring together HR professionals and women business owners, looking at culture and humanity and some other things. And this year I decided for 2025 that I was going to feature women authors. And I invited them, and I'm so blessed and grateful that everyone's like responding so positively. So Celina, thank you so much for being here. We'll do a little introduction. I really appreciate your time. Sorry about the logistics. I'm glad we're going to record this just so that the group that didn't make it can see this later and give me their thoughts. But the other thing I just wanted to say, with Black History Month, I thought, well, I want to feature a Black woman, Canadian, and a nonfiction book. And I'm going to say it was really hard to find the choices. And Kadeen, who's on here finally, sorry about that, Kadeen, who recommended your book. So I'm just so thankful that she did that and that I found you, because even though I follow politics and everything else, I didn't really know your story. And so I just really, really enjoyed reading Can You Hear Me Now? And I just want to also acknowledge that with women too, it's so hard to find our voice. So because you only have a little bit of limited time, what I thought I'd do, and I also just want to acknowledge the land we're on, we do that as well. I have sometimes people coming in from Germany and other places as well. And, wrapped up in this story of being, I'm a first generation Canadian. My parents were immigrants from Poland. But I think it's really important to look at that, like the history of Canada. And what a time, like with the election in Ontario yesterday, this US election. So I can't wait for everyone to ask you questions and open up the floor. I'm not going to be dominating your time. I want to make sure that everybody here has a chance to ask you any questions while you're here for the next 20 minutes or half an hour, since I took up the 10 minutes trying to get everybody in. For those who didn't make it, I'm really sorry. We had a few logistic issues. If you're watching this later, you can send us questions. I'm sure that Celina will answer them remotely. But I just wanted to acknowledge one other thing, that you should not be the only champion of equity and inclusion, and that, we have a part in it. And since the last 5 years, even longer, I've been really diving deep into looking at white privilege and white supremacy and our institutions and what can I do. So this book really reminded me of the role that everyone plays. And if we do have privilege and power and opportunity, which I didn't have, there's some similarities in our background as growing up in a certain neighborhood. But anyway, I just find that it's so important to kind of revisit these. So welcome. And I think everybody here knows who you are. But would you mind just really quickly to kick us off? First, I would just wanted to ask you, that a little bit about the book writing process. How tough was that to kind of really be so raw and get your story out there and be so authentic and transparent while you were writing? And then I want to know a little bit about this whole political, just because the timing is so important. And whether you had any regrets. So just starting with that, and then I'm going to open up the floor after to everybody else to ask whatever questions. So thank you again. You're just an incredible inspiration, and I really appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much. And I really want to just acknowledge, we could breathe. It's totally fine. Technology things happen. So hit record. It's not a big deal. And I will answer any questions. So to answer your questions, the writing process for anybody who is interested. So I'm going to answer these questions as if people would be interested in writing themselves. Start. Everybody has a story and stories are sticky. So I didn't start writing the book when I got the deal. I started writing the book years and years before when I started just thinking about my business, in my own business. What are some of the lessons that I learned? And every time I learned a lesson, I'd write it down and go, oh my God, never take the first offer. And I'd write that down and I'd write the story around it that said, well, I took the first offer when I first started my business and went to a conference where everybody else that took the better offer was. And I said, "Oh my God, this is so great. I'm so glad to be like, starting on this clinical trials." And they were, discussing the budget, and people's budgets were three, four, five times higher than the one that I didn't bother negotiating because I was just so happy to get the deal. And so I write that down, never take the first offer. And this is what happened. Da, da, da. And then by the time I was ready to actually write the book, I had all of these little stories and all of these little lessons. And so when the deal happened with Penguin, they said to me, I wanted to write a story that was related to one particular thing, or I wanted to write a story about just the lessons that I learned over the last years of business and politics. And they said, no, we want your life story. And so all I had to do was plug and play my life into those lessons, you know, and come up with a great novel or a great book. And so the one thing when you ask me, how did I write that was in a way that was so vulnerable? Well, if you're writing when things are happening, you're actually writing with all of that emotion. And so I remember after when I was writing about what was happening with me and the prime minister, didn't have a deal yet, but I was just writing and I was angry. And I'm writing this thing and I'm just all of the venom, all of the anger is coming out of me. And my editor says to me, Celina, this is great. I love what you've written here. It's very raw, it's very emotional. Um, but I want to ask you a question. What do you want this book to do? Do you want it to hurt or do you want it to heal? And that changed some of the energy that was in the book. So in areas where I could have been more venomous, more angry, I wrote it from the perspective of the person that was inside me watching this unfold and feeling so hurt, as opposed to the person who was experiencing the hurt. And so I wrote it from that perspective. And to answer your final question, no, I don't have any regrets because in the writing of this book, I wanted it to be exactly like you said. I wanted to write a book about what happened while I was there, whether that was politics or university or anything. I wanted to write a book about what happened when I was there. And if we want spaces to change, if we want them to be more inclusive, we can't sugarcoat that experience. We have to say what actually happened such that those that come next are not surprised. But then they could say, oh, Celina's experience plus my experience, we need to change this. We need to change the policy. We need to change the sign on the door. We need to do whatever needs to change. Needs to be changed from an authentic place. If I said everything was, oh, it was great, then what's going to change with that? Right. So there's a responsibility in our storytelling. But so there was no regrets in writing it. There was no regrets in being vulnerable because the third reason I wrote the book is that I just didn't want people to feel the pain that I felt in a lot of those moments. And if I could protect people from feeling that pain, then I would be as vulnerable as possible because it wasn't just about me healing. It was about those who opened the pages to feel like, ah, first of all, my life is not as bad as Celina. Have you read some of this crap? Like she's done some stuff. But also to say, oh God, I'm not the only one who did this. I'm not the only one who went through some form of addiction or abortion or affair. People do that all the time. Like, stop kicking yourself over it. And I wanted that to be a real cathartic moment, but also a healing moment for us all. And let us understand that our collective humanity includes our mistakes and our challenges and our shames, but it also includes our healing and our happiness and our triumphs.
Wow, that's so beautiful. And that comes out. Do you have an audio? I can't remember.
I do, and I recorded the
Okay,
audiobook. Yeah.
okay.
So,
I may have to
and
go listen to it because I love when an author does the audio as well, because just even hearing you
yeah.
speak those words, I got a bit of goosebumps here because,
Oh,
it's one of those things that there are so many stories untold.
yeah.
And that when you read a book like this, I keep putting it up because I'm
Yeah.
really,
Thank you. Thank you. And it
yes,
was the
I
hardcover.
know we'll get Emmeline to do a screenshot quick one before you hop off, but it's just also that, I can never walk in your shoes, and I do
Yeah.
want to say I'm really, really sorry that you went through so much of that. Because there was so much pain that you could hear through the pages, and
Yeah.
this is our growth, and that the more people, it's unfortunately there's a couple people that usually come here who have really adverse stories, and to be able to just see it and hear other people's stories, but you leading the way, I mean, our government institution. Hey, did Justin ever read the book?
I don't know, but I know people around him did and have
Oh,
reached
wow.
out and
Yeah.
were appreciative of it.
Yeah. So Catherine has a question.
Yeah.
So over to you, Catherine.
I just want to say thank you so much for really hitting the nail on that common humanity and
Yeah.
writing such a beautiful book. And what really resonates with me as a fellow author, it's exactly that. It's like Hemingway, your first draft is crap, right? And you do, it's almost as a psychotherapist, it's almost a form of therapy, right?
Yeah.
To really embrace that fury and
Yeah.
set it all down on the paper. And I think for those who are listening later to know that these processes do start so many years in advance with the conversations in your head. And then
Mhm.
what I loved, what I love that you said is you made little notes along the way. So like we're writing our books, especially a memoir, for years before, right? But
Yeah.
I really did appreciate that you found that balance, and I had to find it for myself too. We
Yeah.
need to talk about the tough times
Yeah.
and normalize that for people. We're all going to have depression.
Yeah.
We're all going to have, yeah, some form of maladaptive coping mechanism, whether that's an addiction or whether it's, lashing out at people, right? And now that it's Black History Month and it's almost International Women's Day, I am like so honored to be, with an author and a very accomplished woman like yourself, right? To
Yeah.
really elevate what that means for us and moving forward, as you said, how we can change, like, so other women don't have to suffer a lot of these same
Yeah.
consequences. And so I think in your actual dedication in the book, you described your mother as the iron that sharpened me. And I think that's really important because, as someone in the mental health field, and most of us have children here, or as a parent, we need to raise our girls to get out of that niceness cage, of
Mhm.
course, and to be
Mm.
to be strong and kind, right? So that's where that fury piece kind of backfires sometimes, just standing your ground, having the information. So I think we have to get away from helicopter parenting and the hands-off parenting. I think it's swinging back now. But if you had one recommendation for the mothers out there, maybe it's a word like I recommend, make sure your girls know that they have a voice, help them practice it, whether that's returning something at the store, or whether that's having a conversation with a teacher about the bully in the playground. Um, how do we teach them that balance without having to be iron fisted, right? But yeah, letting them walk out the door. I don't want to wear my boots. Fine, go out in the snow. See how long you last out there. Is that a choice you want to make now? So there's this fine line, but I'd be very interested to hear from your perspective, having written the book, having had a mother who, we all do what we do with the skills, competencies, and backgrounds we have, right?
Yeah.
Um, What would your mother maybe say to you now? What would you like to say to your children? And what would you like women of our future generations to be saying to their women as we raise them going forward and celebrate the, combined strength of International Women's Day? That was kind of long-winded, but
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay. So I'll go back to where you started around the collective humanity, because I do call the political experience the most painfully beautiful experience I've ever had. It allowed me, I needed to go through that painful experience to get to where I am. And if you read any book, philosophy by Aldous Huxley, it's so finely written in his perennial philosophy that sometimes you don't know that water is uh, hydrogen and oxygen until you put it under immense pressure. And likewise, many of us don't recognize our divinity until we're put under immense pressure. And so I needed that pressure to break open and to really understand the power of who I am. And so I really love that. And it was an extension, if I could add it to my mother. My mother and I don't really have the greatest relationship. We've never had it, but she did what she could with a daughter who was quite rebellious and coming into Canada and all of the things that your moms worry about, plus a new immigrant, and then this child who just won't shut up. Like, and she's swearing more than she's saying any healthy words. So she just like anyhow, so she was the iron that sharpened me, and so I really needed to acknowledge that relationship in the book because it was the version of her that created that little Celina that popped out at the end that said, "Look, Prime Minister, I don't care if your name is Trudeau, like back up." Right? So that version of me was created from that little Celina, and it carried all the way through to who I am today. And so while I don't think I have the authority to give any other moms recommendations, because I think parents parent the way they can based on their child, based on their gut, I would say that one of my favorite books is Spark by Christine Barnett. And I should have brought that with me as well, because I keep it here, by Christine Barnett, Christine with a K. And Christine, I'm always going to give out books and research references. But Christine writes this book called Spark, and she talks about having a son who was nonverbal and going to the doctor. Doctor says he's going to be nonverbal, never going to be able to speak. And I'm going to kind of give away the plot, but it's still a beautiful book. So she feels in her gut, no, I don't think so. So he goes to his appointments all day and he's like made to, he wants to go sit in a corner and stare at like something. And the doctor pulls him out and says, no, you have to do this test, do this. And she's just like cringing. This is like so wrong. So at night, she takes him out into the fields and he could just sit on the top of the roof of the car and look at the stars. And then one day he says, love you, mommy.
oh,
And while I cannot tell people how to parent, what I could tell women, whether you're a parent or not, is to trust your intuition. That alignment between thought, heart, and gut is so important because how I parent Desiree is not the same way how I parent Candace. It's not the same way how I parent Johnny. But my intuition around them, my love for them allows me to strike that balance as I go along in my parenting journey. And I'm a parent that's different from my partner who just says everything. I'm going to talk to you about tampons. I'm going to talk to you about whatever. I'm going to wax your bikini line. I don't care. Like I've seen it, I've done it. Like it's not a thing for me. But that is not to presuppose that others will. But the common thing that we all have is that intuitive sense of who our children are, or for those of us who don't birth the children naturally, our intuitive sense of things that are happening around us. And therefore, we could protect each other, whether they're our children or not, because we have this collective humanity, because our intuitive senses were what came up, it came into being long before we had our brains. That thing that we think is our brain, the cerebrum, that came after the limbic system. So humans just developed that part of our the cortex. So the intuitive part, the limbic system, is what kept us alive long before we started rational thinking. Rational thinking actually just kills creativity and intuition. And we start thinking that we need to be, we think this through. Like, come on. Like, let's not forget who we are on the feminine side and keep drawing into that gut feeling. And that's Christine Burnett is just so brilliant in activating that in motherhood, that I think it's a beautiful way to sort of say what you need to say to moms without actually saying what you need to say to moms.
Oh, I love that. That is so beautiful. I mean, it's such a journey, isn't it? My
Yeah.
daughter just turned 25 and my son just turned
Oh, mine
18.
too. Oh,
And it's just so amazing to see life through them. And
yeah.
I've
Yeah.
made so many mistakes and done the same things that I said I would never do. And I just wanted to read
Can
a
I just hold on?
pass.
Can I just give one shout out though? Because the cover, it's when you like trust your gut and like actually
Mhm.
give your children that rope, Catherine. If you look on the inside cover, this cover was designed by my then 16-year-old. So Candace Rain Chavannes is on the inside cover as the design concept for the cover of the book. So she actually got
Ah,
credit, and she was so jacket photo and concept Candace Rain Chavannes. So she got a contract with Penguin and was paid a nominal amount by Penguin to do this. So,
wow.
you know, moms, and at the end of the book, in the acknowledgments where I talk about if moms, if you could get your children to eat broccoli, you could rule the world. We wouldn't be having all these challenges. Just put a mom in the White House.
Oh,
Be good.
I know our time is so limited. I want to make sure Emmeline and Kadeen have a chance to ask or even put a question in the chat if they don't want to come out. But this part, I mean, you said so much even about we all have to continue to heal ourselves in order to keep
Yeah.
healing the world and all of those things. So near
Mhm.
the end, like in charge of myself chapter, I found that again because having started my kind of work on myself only about 10 years ago, discovering all these things about how I was only in my head and I chased my whole life, basically, trying to get out of. I grew up in Ontario housing here, so I saw a lot. And I was like always chasing the thing and putting myself through and working so hard. And I'm like trying to slow down and it's hard, but I love this. And one of the other things, a theme in our book circles is about because we want to be able to also make a contribution and make an impact. And for my work is in workplaces and a lot of other people here helping. But it's really about helping, and it's not us, it's like helping them have the space to find what
Yep.
they need for themselves and everything. But this part, the management of one's presence in the world is an art. Figuring out your strengths and weaknesses, your abilities, style, and values helps you identify what type of contribution you can make to the world.
Mm-hmm.
And then later on, it's taking the time to truly understand yourself and why you behave the way you do opens the door to understanding, kindness, empathy, and compassion towards others. And so often, the effort to make lasting, beneficial change in this world rests on treating yourself and others with kindness and respect. And it's like we don't treat ourselves sometimes with the compassion and love that we give to others. And so as I started to read this, because so much of it was, I didn't share a lot of my story. I still need to share a bit more, but
Yeah. Okay.
just the work we need to do. And I feel like there's so much opportunity right now for newer generations to kind of go inward, but yet there's more anxiety and loneliness. And, you've had reading your pain. And I mean, your hubby is amazing. He's been there for you. It's so nice to have the supports, but it's like we're repeating history sometimes. Um, this whole depression and everything. Like we need these supports. So do you have any again, it links together with children and everything else, is like, how do we not repeat? We keep saying we're not going to repeat the mistakes of history.
Right.
And yet here we are. We're making it even worse if you ask me. But I know that's a lot rolled up, but it's like,
Yeah,
so
but
for
I
us to
think
keep working on ourselves to then keep creating that ripple effect, I guess.
that's
And
correct. That's correct. But we do not want to do, as Carl Jung says, the shadow work, right? We want to continue to fall into those patterns. But I want to be very clear I'm doing my PhD right now in neuroscience and studying decision making and really understanding, motivated cognition and how our brain works just to keep us safe. It's going to do what it needs to do, just keep you safe. So even if it's bad for you. So if the habit you formed, doesn't expend a lot of energy, your brain is a 2-pound mass on the top of your head that uses 20% of your energy at rest. So when you have to actually think about something, your brain's going, oh God, here we go. Like dust off the cobwebs. Let's think about something now. So you've been doing this one thing that you know is bad for you for, years and years and years. And then all of a sudden you think you're going to be able to change that habit and change yourself like that? No, that's where the intentionality comes in, because you're going to have to say to your brain, look, we need to change this. We need to change what we are doing here. And your brain's going to go, oh, sis, let's just do that tomorrow, because today we're at capacity. And then tomorrow you're going to go, hey, you know what? Let's change this habit. Let's not go back to what we used to do, like fighting with your spouse, or, not extending yourself grace, or kicking yourself when you know you should be resting. And your brain's going to go, honey, today we're going to just, do what we did yesterday, because we are at 20% and we don't really want to go to 25. And it keeps doing that until you say, absolutely not. Here's the strategy I'm going to use to be able to change that behavior. And so instead of going in a loop, you start to go in a spiral that starts to go somewhere. So you get off the loop and into a spiral. Same going, like you're still going around, but you're actually going around up. Right? So in the book, I talk about my loneliness, allowing my onlyness to become my loneliness. And upon reflection, thinking right now, I actually maybe needed a little bit of that. I needed that only to have that lonely, to be alone, not lonely, but to be alone, so that I could start to really work on myself. From 2019, after leaving politics, I spent 2 years practicing Ayurveda, going very deep into healing, very deep into understanding who I am, so that I could get to a point where I could extend myself the grace that I extend to everybody else and often forget to give to myself. And so in learning that lesson, that's where you're able to start to be beneficial to anybody around you when you get off the loop and start to go in the spiral. Then you could start to say, I'm leveling up for myself first in order to level up for those people around me.
oh, so beautiful. Oh my gosh. I love it's so funny. I was just about to buy a book on Ayurveda. Anyway, it's just wherever we
Beautiful
are in
practice.
our
Beautiful.
journey, and the neuroscience, and for me, just really tapping into the body and intuition. Like, it's been
Yeah.
such a difficult journey to break patterns, like you said, that I've had for decades.
But don't beat yourself up on it. Know that
Yeah.
there's a practice. I actually just started an institute called the Institute of the Awakened Leadership Institute, where I start to put
Mm.
these courses together to help people break those patterns, imposter syndrome, and self-doubt, etc. So, but it's a
Mm.
practice. It's not just I'm going to do this today. Some people can, and for others,
Wow.
it's a little bit more difficult, and they
What a
require
journey. What a
some
journey
help.
you're on.
I see
And it's
Kadeen.
still
Hi,
going.
Kadeen. You came
Hey,
off
Dean, you
camera.
want to
How are
ask?
you?
Yeah. Thank you for popping in. I appreciate you. Sorry about the logistics there.
No, no, it's all good. Listen, we all have to show each other some grace. So, first of all, Helen, thank you for taking my recommendation I didn't know Celina would even be available. So, Celina, thank you for saying yes
Oh, thank
to
you.
Helen's request. I haven't had an opportunity to read the book yet, but I will.
Okay.
It's on my list of books to get, among the other things. But I just think that you're such an incredible human being,
Oh,
woman, mother, sister, friend. I've been watching you and admiring you for a long time. You know, we go way
hi.
back,
We people,
right?
yes.
Even though we were not connected like that anymore or haven't been for a
Yeah.
long time, I still have so much respect and admiration for you and just love to see the life and the platform that you've built for yourself. So I just wanted to say that. My question is, and then I have to get off camera so I can get back on the road because I just had to drop someone off. My
Okay.
question is what's next for you? When you think of the next chapter, next iteration of Celina, what is next?
So, and I don't mind if you come off camera so you could get back on the road and I'll answer this question. But when, I've been very intentional when people ask me what's next to say I don't know. I'm doing now next, right? I'm very intentional about being present. And so I want to honor that when in my answer to you, knowing full well that I do have a next planned. But I've learned that you could have all the plans in the world, and the universe says, well, here's a nice monkey wrench that I want to just throw into your mix. And then the monkey wrench throws you off. So I'm doing now, yes, yes. I love being intentionally present, but I am doing my PhD and I'm looking at the factors that impact Black women. So the neurocorrelates of decision making that have impacted why Black women leave corporations and go into entrepreneurship. Black women are the fastest growing entrepreneurs in North America. And oftentimes they are studied as if in a petri dish. So, oh, racism happens to you, sexism happens to you, and we need to study these things that happen to you as if we're not autonomous beings. And so I want to study to understand from a phenomenological perspective what and a neuroscientific perspective that decision-making process. Am I leaving because of something that has happened, or am I leaving because I'm just tired? I said enough. I want love. I want joy. I want to experience life on my own terms. That has never been done. We've never asked us why. And although it's for a PhD, you have to be very specific. So I have to study Black women and 20 of them in a particular cohort. I think that this allows for the understanding of why people leave from a holistic perspective. Why do people leave relationships? Why do people leave jobs? Why do people leave whatever they want to leave and make that decision from the perspective of themselves? So we're looking at, is there cognitive dissonance that occurs? And what parts of the brain are activated with that? Or is there no dissonance at all? And Black women make this decision because they just want to find joy and reward, in which case the reward system of the brain is going to be activated. So understanding not what is happening to them, but what they are doing in response to that situation is that is the love of my life. And that is what I'm doing
Well, I
next.
just wanted to chime in and say if you need a case study, if you need someone, because as someone who just got fed up and left corporate, quit corporate with no backup plan or anything in 2019, and I'm still trying to figure it all out, this entrepreneurship journey, I'm happy to
Yes.
be a part of your study if you need that.
So, you know what? I'm going to put my email in, like send me an email because we are starting to develop the protocol for that. I just finished my comprehensive exams and passed. So I am a
Congrats.
PhD candidate. You know what? I will, if you could send out my email, Helen, after to her, that would be great because we have so many women who are
Oh,
just want to
yes. I think
participate.
that is fantastic. And I can say that when I'm around Kadeen, she just lights me up. And so she's got probably a lot more joy than she had in the corporate life, like all of us.
Perfect.
Sorry. I am I am one of those people too that, yeah, corporate
I'm
was,
looking at the time and I want to make sure,
yes.
Emmeline, did you have a
Yeah.
question before I head out?
Yeah.
God, I had a lot of, I mean, it's my favorite types of conversations to listen to because, you listen to someone speak and it just lights up a million different parts of your psyche and you just get inspired and you connect the dots and you find reference points and inspiration that you've had from like prior thoughts and ideas.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if I have a particular question. I think it's more a series of observation and the way, I mean, I come from the other part of the Atlantic, so obviously things are different, but they're also not that, we're human beings together. And so what I noticed with what you said made me think about a lot of writers and thinkers that I admire greatly. Some of them, Blink, Malcolm Gladwell. I'm sure you read it. It's fantastic, and it really sort of shifted my perception on what we call intuition and how predetermined it is by the subconscious bias and where we come from and our history and our genes and all of that. um and you really made me think a lot about leadership in general and how to redefine leadership for everyone, but also for the youngest generations, because they're just not interested in politics the way they should and ought to be. In politics being the poetic fabric of our society, they see it as an entity that is distant and dangerous and untrustworthy. And so you made me think about and sort of like brainstorm with myself about what leadership really means in and outside of the political space. And you look at someone like Brené Brown and the work she does on vulnerability and courage in and outside of institutions, and people like Glennon Doyle in her book Untamed, and all of these wonderful women speaking about all these things. And I'm just wondering about the nature of leadership as a concept for the years and generations to come, and how that is going to shift and intrinsically be connected to this notion of vulnerability. We can't separate the human from the political actor. We can't separate the societal character from the actual human being. And in that regard, you do represent sort of like a new wave, a new version of what it means to be a politician, because actually most politicians are not leaders on like a philosophical and conceptual sense. They're just not. They're in it for very intrinsic and personal motives. So it really just made me think about this notion of, okay, how do we reestablish and redefine and collectively think about a new version of leadership, one that has different interests at heart, and really reassess that the human balance of the collective as a global consciousness to move forward with different values. And I don't have obviously I don't have the answer, but it just really inspired me to rethink this notion of leadership in general and how it ties with vulnerability and courage in the private personal space as much as in the public one, if that makes sense.
Wow.
Makes total sense. And the only thing I would answer to that is I don't have the answer either.
Yeah.
But when I read books, I love reading the preface and the acknowledgments. So I put a lot of little juicy bits in my preface and acknowledgments. And the last paragraph in the acknowledgments of the book is, to the people of Canada and beyond, your value is not determined by your title, and your leadership does not require a title. The power has always belonged to the people. It is time for the people to realize their power. It is not enough to hear my voice. We need to hear you too. So in that understanding of our collective capacity to explore the critical consciousness that is required for this time, to embrace Pablo Freire's conscientizao, to embrace dialogue that is the framework of Black feminist thought, as well as Paulo Freire's work, to look at how we could explore levels of consciousness. I'm actually just finished writing a paper on consciousness. It's like a conceptual framework for looking at how our psyche filters biases and when we look at particular phenomenon. So there isn't an answer, but I think when we understand the subjectiveness of consciousness as a beautiful essence of what it is, and the fact that it can't be reduced to some singularity, but also understanding that it actually can, when we understand that oneness of who we are, that connectedness of who we are, it's so complicated and beautiful. And if we are able to then say, okay, it's like an infinity symbol. If it's everything and one thing at the same time, how do we leverage our collective consciousness to start to deal with some of the problems that we have? And that is leadership. That is saying I could take my story that is completely different from your story, completely subjective in the way that we look at a tree, for example. And we could say, well, here are the common things that we see, as opposed to, no, I'm right, you're wrong, I'm right, you're wrong, which is debate. We can have a dialogue about it and say, well, what are the common things that we could see about this tree? And let's solve the problem of this tree, or like the challenge of this tree, by coming together with our common ground. That's leadership. That's what we're missing right now. It's not about thumping our chest and saying, I'm the best and you're the worst. It's actually about saying, there's stuff that is happening here. And at the end of the day, the one that is going to be left behind is the most vulnerable in our society. And are we just going to let that happen because we can't exchange dialogue for debate? That's not who we are. It has never been who we are as human beings. And so we do have a responsibility to redefine leadership as a concept. I find leadership, even as a construct, needs to be deconstructed, because it means that language is so powerful. In order for you to be a lead, somebody has to follow. And that's conceptually unbalanced for me. It's really colonialist for me. So there's no sharedness in that. So it's important for us to like think about that critical consciousness that's required for us to restore our collective humanity. That's how I would reframe leadership.
Wow. What a beautiful dialogue. This has been just so amazing to have you. I'm mindful of your time, and I know you have to
I gotta
go.
run.
I'm going to see if Emmeline can take a screenshot. If anybody has their book to hold up, and I don't know if Kadeen can come back off camera or not, but oh my gosh, just a quick screen. Thank you. Thank you. Oh my gosh.
I'm sorry.
Wonderful.
Oh,
Got it.
and
Okay, good. Okay, come back off camera.
you are incredible. I'm going to reach out after because I do want to keep in touch, and I will get
Yeah.
your email.
And if
And
we
I
have to
mean,
do this again, we could do
oh my
this again.
gosh, I could talk to you all day and just listen to everybody. And Emmeline, thank you, because you are our future. And I'm so blessed that I'm going to be working with you, and just can't wait to see what you write in the future too. So this was amazing. Celina, thank you so much. Have
I'm
a
sorry. I'm headed to
beautiful.
Ottawa, then headed to Quebec, so I have to keep
No,
going.
I
But thank you so
appreciate
much
you.
for having me. This was
Yeah.
joy.
Oh, our joy for having you with us. Thank you
Rock.
so
Thank
much.
you.
Bye.